Hello and welcome to On Air by Yoga for First Responders. I'm Olivia, CEO founder, and with me, as always, is Eric, my husband, president, and the bearded wonder.
Ooh, the bearded wonder. I like this. I'm curious what my intro is going to be each episode. Like that's going to become a thing. Like
Okay, this is
what is the last piece?
now I have to figure it out. But if we're actually indeed drinking whiskey, I bet you I'm going to have some real good ones up my sleeve. So we just spoke to Katrina Marsh. She is a yoga teacher in Dixon, California. She was a delight. We had a really fun conversation. My favorite part about her, which is my favorite part about us, favorite part about myself, um, is that she clearly knows her shit. She is a badass boss lady and also is not afraid to have a laugh. So Katrina
No,
is
right.
a visionary female entrepreneur who strives to bring love and light to each industry she steps into. And she definitely brought it to our podcast.
Yeah, she radiates that
She
actually.
does. She has a
Yeah.
beautiful smile. We love her. She is a published author, international speaker, and two-time business owner. Boom, girl.
I
And
mean, come on.
she's clearly younger than we are too. So I'm just like, girl, yes.
Well done. Well done. Like honestly, well done.
Katrina is the founder of Busy Bee Studios, the first and only yoga studio in her city, Dixon, California, which we found out has less than 20,000 people, fewer than 20,000 people.
Right.
Busy Bee Studios was opened in 2021, where she has since expanded it twice with the support and growth she has experienced in her town. Through Busy Bee Studios, she strives to share the practice of yoga and strengthen her community in the process. Her dad is a former first responder and sounds like one hell of a guy. And my favorite part, again, besides the fact that she is like us, is is that she is so intelligent and also understands the fact that if you are going to be bringing something new to first responders, it is imperative that you have the skills to do it successfully, effectively, and safely, and which is why she has enrolled in YFFR's Bridge course. And so if anyone is on the fence or thinking about it or new to yoga for first responders, and this is your first intro, this would be a great way to understand the importance of that. So without further ado, Eric, do you have anything else to say?
No, I actually thought that was a really good intro to just start the show.
Okay, let's start the show. Welcome to Yoga for First Responders On Air, where we break down yoga, neuroscience, resilience, and public safety in a manner that's authentic, educational, and most importantly, entertaining and lighthearted. I'm YFFR's founder, Olivia Mead. As a yoga instructor and neuroscience enthusiast, I'm passionate about supporting first responders and anyone looking to improve their overall human performance. Each week, we'll dive into a new topic and often bring on expert guests to share their insights and experiences. But we'll also keep it real and share our own stories and struggles along the way. So whether you're a first responder or seeking to master the science of mental and physical resilience, this podcast is your ultimate guide to triumph over life's challenges with unbreakable strength and unwavering fortitude. By pressing play, your training has begun.
How did you, Kat, and us, Yoga First Responders, how do we meet? Like, I don't know. What's our origin story?
Oh yeah. So it's kind of a roundabout in a way. I have a yoga studio in Dixon, California, where I'm based. And I had a few students send me a post that was an account called Solano County First Responder Families. And they were looking for a yoga instructor to teach a class at a space that can fit up to 30 people. And we had recently just expanded. So I was like, that's me. I can do it. And when I saw it was her first responders, I was like, please, like from a personal standpoint, I would love to do this. I haven't heard back from them yet, but in the process of kind of looking at what they were all about, I stumbled across YFFR. And I think they had put a post about your guys' program on their account. And so then I kind of stalked your page a little bit. And then I sent a I sent a DM to your guys' Instagram,
Yeah.
and it had an automated response, so I didn't know if anybody was like actually saw those messages, but I was like, I don't know if anybody sees these, but I just want to say that this is such an awesome program. I've been like stalking your website and your Instagram, and I love what you guys do, and I'm excited to like see what more you guys have. And then I got a response like pretty quickly that was like, "Hi, my name's Jess, and I'm the director over here." And she kind of introduced herself, and then we hopped on a Zoom call, and she kind of told me a little bit more about the program and about the bridge course that's coming out, which is so exciting. So that was kind of like the path of me finding you guys, and which is awesome.
Totally cool. So Dixon, California, just outside of Sacramento, San Francisco corridor area, if the map that I looked at is correct.
Yes.
And so,
I was like, wait, how?
and so we have some folks in like Vacaville. Is that close by? Or is that wrong direction? No, that's close by.
That's like 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away.
Oh
yeah.
my God.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, we're going to have to make some great connections with some folks in Vacaville then. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So Vacaville has a few studios actually. Busy Bee, my studio is the only one in our city.
Nice.
But usually everybody was going to Vacaville prior for yoga, or Davis, which is another neighboring city. That's a kind of our college town. So that's where they were going for all their yoga. But we're sandwiched between, Sacramento, San Francisco, and then we have all those rural towns: Vacaville, Davis, Winters Woodland. That's all near us.
Cool.
Vacaville is our two instructors there. One is a dispatcher and one is a police officer. So they're not 200-hour trained. I don't think Lauren is. Instructors, they're not, we train people. So this is what's interesting about instructor school in person, is that some people have never touched a yoga mat that have come to our instructor school, and they're full on teaching. And the reason that makes it so great, actually, that they don't have any background, they're a clean slate, is we don't have to break bad habits,
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so they always kind of do this like stellar job, because we're really teaching like, here are the primary points of yoga, teach this. And they don't know that they're supposed to wear Lululemon. They don't even know that they're supposed to, in quotes, wear mom. I don't know what these balloons are.
Man, but you got ballooned on that comment. Like,
I always do hand stuff, and then all of a sudden there are like these new emojis that come up, and they never have made my hand motion. So
it matches perfectly.
I think so. Balloons, celebrate. So what's so cool about connecting with you, and what we're kind of doing almost for the first time, is we really weren't working in like closely with yoga studios, yoga studio owners. We were instead of being the first responder community of the yoga world, we're the yoga people of the first responder world, right? So so we're working with them more than with sort of the yoga world out here in the West. But and kind of your story is why we're making this switch of now including the yoga world, is that there are these requests like you've just seen for your county,
There's a need.
And folks do want to answer that call. And a lot of times logistically, they may not be able to get to in-person instructor school, but they feel the need to be better trained on the cultural competency and, things like that. And so I was like, God, we got to figure out a way to reach those people too. And I think it's important that we started as the yoga people of the first responder world, rather vice versa, because the credibility we have in public safety is now off the charts. So when we do start to bring in more and more instructors, you will have the backing of 10 years of experience of YFFR to support you as you go in. So
that's incredible.
Like perfect candidate for what we're about to.
And I'm excited about what you said too at the beginning, because I say this oftentimes. So you said you're in a small town between two bigger cities. Like how big is Dixon? Put it on the map for us. Like how many people? roughly?
Oh, gosh, you're really pulling out the fun facts of Dixon, and I should know this because I'm growing up here.
I got it pulled up for. I got it pulled up for you.
I was gonna say, don't fact check me. How about let's just Google it.
Yeah. So the Google machine says less than 20,000 people. Less than 20,000 people.
It's a small town, yeah. And it was funny because when I first brought yoga to Dixon, we did it as a donation-based kind of thing. So I was in a mortgage office, and it could fit about 4 yoga mats. I said 6 because I was feeling confident, but it really was like 4 yoga mats, and I would stand at the front and I'd give my yoga instruction. You can walk around. It was very small. And we just did it as a donation-based thing to kind of get the feel for it, because everybody in our town was either like, oh, I already go somewhere for yoga, or like, what kind of cult is she bringing into our small town? So I was like, it is, beginner friendly. I didn't throw like Sanskrit in like into any of my classes in the beginning. Like, we wouldn't touch on any of the ooey gooey. It would be very like secular, very like exercise based. Mm-hmm. Now we're at this point where we're growing. We have like this huge new development coming in. We have a lot of Bay Area presence now. We have a lot of people moving into our city, which is amazing. And they're looking for their yoga. But we also have grown with our community, where these people that wouldn't touch our advanced classes with a 10-foot pole are now like, yeah, no, we don't need the beginner. What else do you have? And so we're excited to be offering more and more in that range of, whoever's coming into our community, being able to serve them.
Yeah. And you even said that
I have some questions for you. So go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. And you even said, and this is what I really wanted to key into, is you said you had requests from some first responders. Because we often get this conception that like this is only for, the crunchy people in the big cities. Like,
right.
But
first responders is what he's trying to say. It's like, right. Like, because I'll give you an example, because when I moved, I started this in Los Angeles. And when I moved to Iowa, a lot of my students, first responder students in Los Angeles, were like, oh, well, the coasts, we're cool and we're cool with yoga stuff, but the small Midwest town, you'll never make it. So that's what he's saying, is the crunchy.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm excited for you, and why you can be a great advocate, honestly, is because there's thousands of yoga teachers out there in small towns, 20,000 people less. They're like, oh, my first responders would never even want this. And you just said it. The words came out of your mouth. I got requests from my first responders, and you're arguably a small town yoga instructor. Like, yes,
right. There's a need.
There's an accomplishment. There's a win. There's a need. And this is the thing I always say too, and we can dive into it. But the small town first responders, they need this stuff, quite frankly, more than the big city ones, because they know everybody in town. They know everybody that they're interacting with. So super cool that you built that trust already with that community, and they're coming to you for it. So
I'm very grateful for the community. Like, even just the leaps we've been able to make. We opened in 2021, so we're fairly new, and just the support from our community, the growth that we've been able to receive is all because of the business associations here, the neighboring business and their owners that will like kind of spread the word about our studio, and just kind of like feet on the ground, introducing the topic to people that may have thought prior, like, oh, you need to do the splits to do yoga. I'm like, it's a lot more than that, and a lot less than that at the same time.
Yeah, you're going to fit in great. Like, everything that we teach, you're going to like totally lock into. And to piggyback off of what Eric said before I ask you some questions about your bio here, is that, when Eric said they know everyone in town, what that means is they're likely to run a call on someone they know. Mm-hmm. So more than someone in a big city. And because it's small towns, might be volunteer or whatever, there's way fewer resources for mental health. There's already very few for big cities and big funded departments, and there's even less for small town. And I just want to put that emphasis there, because if any yoga teacher is listening to this and thinks that, training isn't for them because it won't be received, I walked into a very rural fire department when I first moved to Iowa, and I taught them almost the entire time that I lived there, along with the, city departments as well. So, it's, they'd be grateful. So, okay, I have a couple questions. It says you're an international speaker and 2-time business owner. Can you just tell me about, because that's you're speaking my language, baby.
Yeah, so last year I had a book come out and it was a collaborative effort. And a lot of like what I speak on and what I wrote about was mainly kind of the formation of my businesses, which a lot of it had to do with yoga. But I did a talk in Spain in November that was kind of along the lines of what I wrote about as well. And that was at the first ever Thrive Talks, which is kind of a new women in business like speaking podium that's starting out and starting to spread globally, which is really exciting. So I was on like the beta kind of first run of that. And with the book, that I push my book, and I actually don't like get anything from the sales of that book, but I really push it because it really gives like an insightful experience to the formation of my businesses in more ways than one. I kind of start with like context about me and my family, and I talk about my dad a lot, who is a retired first responder. And then he just opened his own. Yeah, he did. He just opened his own EMS consulting business, and he's currently based in Texas. But he is somebody that I gained so much inspiration from and some bad habits from. So he was like definitely workaholic. He really struggled with like work-life balance. He experienced a lot of trauma, PTSD from his line of work. And I kind of touch on it a little bit, but he deserves volumes of his own books from what he's experienced and what he's gone through and what he's learned and where he is now. So definitely can't do it justice in what we're talking with right now. But I talk about him a lot in my book and just kind of say that, when I was growing up, I got these workaholic tendencies because that's what I had adopted. But I didn't realize that, my dad was trying to work through things himself. He's experiencing life for the first time too, which is always something you got to remind yourself. And so he had to work really hard to get that balance back. He actually practices yoga with my mom, who got me into yoga. And so he's just had this whole transformation as well, which I always like to talk on. So that's kind of like the book, the speaking, and then my two businesses, Busy Bee Studios, and then I also run a media management agency.
What? So what's the first of all?
What was it?
What's the name of your book?
Women Thrive. It's volume 2. It was a collaborative book. So I did it with a bunch of women, and their stories are incredible. So I'm like so proud to be in that book, but I also had a lot of imposter syndrome right off the bat. So I was like, I don't deserve to be in this book with these other incredible women.
Yeah. Wow. And then you said it was a media marketing. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So media management and marketing, that business I co-own with my business partner, James Young. So he's like the creative mind. I'm kind of like the logistical administrative mind behind it. So it's a great collaboration. And then with that, we do mostly media management and marketing for small businesses. We also work with some like branches of like the local governments around here. And then, but yeah, like mainly small businesses is what we're trying to get people online and stay afloat in like this huge shift of, going from paper marketing to digital marketing, but also having a little bit of both and all of that.
Have you ever seen Undercover Billionaire?
I think so. Is it one of those like kind of gag shows where they like put on the wigs and everything? No, I'm thinking of Undercover Boss.
Yes.
Yeah. Similar in some aspects, but no, with this show, it's 3 billionaires who are given $100 and an old truck and dropped off in a small town and are like, okay, make $1 million business in 3 months. And you have to start with your basic needs, like getting a place to stay and all that stuff. But anyway, we're not done with it, season 2 yet. So if someone's watching this and doesn't want any spoiler alerts, like pause and fast forward. But one of the companies that one of them is working on, and we don't know how it turns out yet since we haven't finished, is a media marketing company for a small town. And it's bringing local businesses to this new age of, marketing. Yeah. So so it's funny that you say that, and I'll definitely have to check it out because I love that world as well. So
it's interesting.
And it's important. It's important too that media marketing, how social media is marketing, because we connected through Instagram. Every time that we go to, you wouldn't think of like cops and firefighters being the ones on like Instagram, or fire chiefs or police chiefs or whatever, but it's without a doubt that when we're doing our instructor school or our training programs, half the room or more raises their hand because they saw us on social media first. Like, if you're not there, you're not happening. I'm actually curious, because since you are in marketing, I'm going to pose this question real quick. I mean, this is what our podcast is, folks. You're going to learn about a lot of things besides yoga, and you're going to learn a little bit about that too. One of this marketer in this television show, he actually was saying that the best known business beats the best business every time. The best known business beats the best business every time. And I find that interesting because we have a gold standard business, but yet I like to say it's his terrible marketing, that almost nobody in the world knows who we are. Because, I mean, you look at our socials and we're followed by like 10,000 people plus or minus. I mean, out of 7 billion
you gotta start
people.
somewhere.
I know, but let's be honest, out of 7 billion people, almost no one knows who we are. And so, like, we fight that, right? It's like we fight the best being, while we are, I will dare to say, the best in this industry, we may not be the best known. And so that I just caught that really caught my eye. So being somebody in marketing, what do you think about that? Is that true?
Oh, it's definitely true. And I wouldn't even just say it's unfortunate. I think that you can be both. Sure. You can be, the best in the business and have the best marketing, and just be, the golden goose. But I was talking with, one of, the mortgage company that we started our studio in is Almond Tree Mortgage, and the owner, Kirsten, she was a big push for the opening of our studio. So she's actually kind of inquired with my media side a little bit about starting to run her marketing, because she said in her industry there's been this huge shift where it used to be like 90% skill and 10% marketing. And now it's like 50-50. If you're not marketing, you're not getting anybody. You can see it with like real estate agents as well. Mm-hmm. If you don't have an Instagram and you're constantly on there and, you have your makeup done and all this stuff, like that just seems to be like the new norm now for like the real estate world. So yeah, I definitely think marketing has a big thing to do with any business now.
Okay, so what I have like 3 things at once I want to say about that. First of all, I do want to highlight the fact that we met you through socials and media and marketing and everything. And that is how only this year have we even put a little bit of money towards boosting posts, like it's all been grassroots. And with the, which says something about how and I feel like you kind of grow one first and then you have to start taking over the other one. So like we were doing skill. And then we're like, oh shit, man, we got to like start focusing on. Mm-hmm. And I think this is also kind of tying in to this shift that we're making at Yoga for First Responders and the Bridge course, is that there could be some resistance to the fact that, in any organization, any company, you mentioned real estate, right? To jump on board with social media and different new marketing strategies. For, let's say someone's been in the business of real estate for 30 years. And the stuff they used to do in the past is not working anymore. They have to get Instagram. They have to do reels, all this stuff. And they could be, resistant to that. Maybe it doesn't feel that integral to them. But you have to go with the flow of how the world's changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with yoga too, I've definitely felt this way in the past, where I was super resistant to a few things because I wanted to keep the integrity of the practice of yoga. But the fact of the matter is that if I just ran a tiny little bungalow studio in Rishikesh, I would reach maybe 10 people, and that's where, whatever gifts that I have, whatever gifts you have would stop there. So as it's up to us as innovators and business owners to keep our eye open for the new waves of expansion. Mm-hmm. And so we're always writing this line, or at least I am as, CEO of this company, is, okay, what's going to get the word out and make sure people receive these important practices, and what's going to keep us good and integral at what we do, right? So mm-hmm. I'm constantly like balancing that. And so with the bridge course being exclusively online, I'm going to make it like, she's going to be layered. I'm going to make it simple, of course, and easy to follow and all of that stuff, but it's going to have, content, because I don't want to lose that integrity. So what's your hot take from a yoga perspective, from just learning any sort of skill perspective? What's your hot take of online training?
Okay, so before I touch on that, I think it's important for me to backtrack real quick. So I think marketing is definitely so very important, and almost, if not definitely, necessary. But it doesn't mean that every single business needs to be posting memes on Instagram. So I think marketing comes in a lot of different layers. I specialize in digital, media marketing. So that's why I feel very fluid talking about it. But even on the yoga side, like, that's something that's a little difficult too, because like in, being a hairstylist and being able to take a photo of like, here's the hair, it's sometimes like, you don't really want to go into a yoga class and be like, can everybody smile for a selfie real quick? Like, you're trying to create this Zen environment, and you're trying to keep the integrity of what you're offering, because if everything becomes a marketing opportunity, that loses a lot of quality. But marketing is, exactly. Like, and marketing is collaboration, it's networking, and there's a lot of hands-on things you need to do. I think social media and media in general allow for us to connect faster and at a larger quantity. But sometimes that might be switched out for quality. And then what you were saying about online courses, I have to think about that one, because when I did my yoga teacher training, it was actually half and half. Because I did it in 2020, and so we ran into COVID, and so the rest of it was virtual. I feel like it was a quality experience through and through. I really did love being in person. I felt like it was amazing being around those like-minded people, but it was almost more challenging, and I got almost a little bit more from it because I had to motivate myself when we were on lockdown. I had to like continue with it. I had to kind of dig a little deeper, because when we're meeting on Zoom, we're doing a lot in those Zoom meetings. So I had to do my homework behind the scenes, and it really kind of weeded out, people that weren't taking it seriously and people that were. Because once you show up, you're kind of forced to be in that environment. But when you're on your own, you're doing virtual classes, you can kind of hide behind a screen, you can check the boxes. So there is a way that you can skate by. If your heart's not in it, then that's already going to be shown in your work when you get past your training, if your heart's not in it. But if you're really, if you're serious about it and it's something that you're passionate about, then whether it's online or in person, you're going to soak up all that information and apply it.
That's a really, really great point. And in fact, like, that we already have a way, even in the in-person training, of kind of ways that people will weed themselves out, filter themselves out, because if there's not enough capacity in your life to commit to completion of this training, there's not going to be enough capacity in your life for the effort that it does take to bring yoga to first responders. I mean, that's just because it does take effort, no matter how much support we give you. So that's absolutely true. And but I want to shift to your dad, but one thing I do want to say is what's great about you and your being business minded, and this is something I do want to share with anyone who's considering going to our training, is our new model. What we used to do is all of our instructors, once they became certified, were contractors for us. So we would set up all of their classes and they would teach them and we would pay them. And it got too overwhelming for our little team. So now we actually modeled after other businesses who do, train instructors, not necessarily yoga, but just any business like that. American Heart Association, for instance, does a model like this too, where you become a licensed instructor and then you do your own thing. We're here to support you, of course, in the background, but in terms of making the contracts or agreements with whoever you're teaching, there it is again, the confetti. Or what you charge, what you decide to charge a department, whatever, is up to the instructor. We will give you best practices. We're here to support, but it's important to know that. And as someone who is business minded like you are, I think you're going to take that and run with it without a problem.
I hope
so yeah, I know you will. And we're always here, folks, anyway. And I want to put this question out there, and I want Eric to be part of this specific discussion because he is a retired firefighter. And, Kat, like the approach that we have with traditional yoga is job specific and culturally informed. So we're applying it to their, job and what we know about the life of a first responder. And we're also taking steps to make sure we are teaching for the culture that's in front of us. Yeah. Eric's a first responder, and your dad was, and Eric was. What do you know based on just like knowing your dad? I'm curious what you already are assuming might be things to consider when teaching first responders.
I've thought about this because, and my dad is who comes to mind. So I'm interested to go through the training because I want a more well-rounded perspective. Because my dad's just a unique dude. But
I want to get coffee with your dad. It sounds like, quite frankly, too. Can't wait.
I about him way too much. He's really my best friend. We butt heads so much growing up, and like when I finally moved out of the house, I like this crazy switch where I'm like, wait, actually this guy's kind of cool. So we got along better once we had our own households, which I think can be said for a lot of people.
2 different roofs is that equals peace.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. What is the saying? Like good fences make good neighbors, something like that. Like it's a whole purpose, right? Yeah.
Same thing. But he's got so many layers to him. And I think something that he had to get out of his head about was that, which is something that I started to implement without knowing it, was like hardening yourself. Like he had become very hardened, and it's hard not to do that with the things that you guys see and the calls that you respond to. You're going to get desensitized to a certain level. And I think that he had grown into this persona of like, I'm a man that needs to do this, and I have to keep this shield on at all times. And he definitely thinks differently. He's always like, you guys have to, know where your exits are, and we have like a family code word and like all that kind of stuff. Like he thinks differently, and I've benefited from that, from being his daughter. But he had to kind of start to unravel the layers. He started to go to therapy, which is amazing, practicing yoga, things like that, and just starting to focus a lot more on himself. So I think, taking that into teaching, you need to create a very safe environment that allows people to unravel a little bit. And also kind of probe, like, you don't need to be this hard shell of a human in this classroom, which is already something that I really, really, really try to do. One of my favorite instructors, her name is Wendy, and she was a big reason I got certified. She had this way of like making you laugh at yourself. Like, yeah, why am I taking this seriously? There was this one, I talk about this all the time. So if somebody's watching from my family, they're going to be like, this story again. But there's this class I went to with her, and I don't know if she still teaches. I'll have to find her. But we were doing like a balancing pose. I think we were doing like dancer's pose, and everybody was falling. It was a 6 a.m. class, balance is off. And so we're like really struggling with this balancing pose, just the whole class. So she's like, okay, you guys, like soften your faces, like relax a little bit. It's not that serious. And so she's like, okay, everybody just come out of it. Come back on your mat. And so like everybody's like, okay. And she's like, all right, like super serious. All right, practice your arms. Splay your fingers, like push out your palms, really point out your elbows. You like tense up every muscle in your body, and we're like, okay, yeah, okay. And she's like, now turn to the person next to you and give them a double high five. All right, get out of your head. Let's get back to it. Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah. So, I love that.
Get out of your head. Yeah.
And I think that was all great points, totally in line with what we do. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think it is valuable having that family experience of being around somebody that is in public safety, right? You saw kind of the transformation that public safety took on your dad, for example. And it's the common story. I mean, I felt it when I was on the job. My dad was a firefighter. You can kind of see it across him. You can talk, anybody that you talk to in the public safety world will acknowledge exactly what you just said, which then makes you valuable because you're coming from that personal spot, that spot of personal resource that says, oh, I've seen this in my own family, and this is how we're going to work through that together. Like, and I really liked that you said that, like, we can drop this little bit of these nuggets of wisdom in there too. Like, this is a spot where, like, you can just be you. Like, one of our ground rules that we try to do really well is try to keep the classes just first responders, so that does create that super safe space, because a lot of these men and women are going to feel weird going to a yoga class for the first time, quite frankly. And so they're not used to being out of control and in a weird quote unquote spot in their life. They're used to taking control and taking command. And so it's very off-putting for them to put themselves in that scenario. And the fact that you've got that sense of humor that was weaving through as well. Like, when Olivia first started teaching at my fire department, for example, like, humor is a huge part of it, because that's one of our coping mechanisms. I mean, I'm sure you've heard your dads share jokes that are probably inappropriate. And if he didn't share them with you, he did with his coworkers.
I have to give a disclaimer when people meet him.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
If he says something that offends you, he doesn't mean it.
Right. Yeah, no, totally. But, and so that's part of it too. Like, because at the end of the day, humor is such a valuable tool to open up us as human beings. And I do a lot of breath coaching, and you do as well as being a yoga instructor. And one of the things I really, really, really like is that the best breath work you can possibly do is laughter. Because of all of the hormones that come along with it. And so to find those moments, like, listen, y'all have way harder jobs. This is literally a yoga class. Like, get out of your own way, and let's just get to work.
Yeah.
Then and we all know, because we do. So I am a 200-hour trained instructor as well. That by doing the work of yoga in and of it itself is going to peel away those layers and allow those people to open up some of that stress and trauma that they've been carrying around for so long, which is what makes them harden up. But doing this practice and having teachers that are willing to learn more and become more culturally informed, like you are, is exactly why this is working. It's exactly why it's working. And so super cool. And I'm excited that you're already tapping into those kinds of things without going through a course.
Yeah, I'm excited to go through the course.
I want to highlight that you said that's important is you recognize the hardening, right? And you also said, and it's something that they do need for what they see. And I really want to emphasize that, because what we're not doing is asking them to not have that protective shield on. Because again, you do. If you're going to see something that, it can't penetrate your heart. Otherwise, you're not going to last very long. Okay. So that's part of being culturally informed, is we always tell our instructors, you are not trying to change anybody. You're not trying to say you should be different than what you're doing, Mm-hmm. So there's one of our neuro resets. So instead of meditation, we call it neurological reset or neuro reset. And one of the neuro resets is a written out, almost like Yoga Nidra style, called Iron Heart. And we have them feel this like slab of cement weight that protects them. And we coach them in taking it off in a safe environment, going through a bit of processing, and then mindfully putting it back on with the intention now that it's not suffocating you, it's protecting you, So we are, approaching that truth about being in public safety from a place of respect, that we have to respect the fact that they have to wear this, invisible armor to get through it, but that they do have the power to take it off when they want to take it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
The other thing is I used to teach our protocol with this metaphor, but apparently it was like, I didn't explain it really well. So we changed the metaphor. But I used to explain it as if the breath work was opening up the key to the house. The physical drills, which the asana, right, is cleaning the house. And then the neuro reset or the meditation is locking the door behind you when you leave. So in yoga class, you get to go in there and clean up all the crap from what you've seen, and then close and lock the door to keep it safe as you leave the yoga mat. And everyone would kind of look at me cross-eyed, so I kind of let that metaphor go, but it kind of,
that makes sense.
Yeah, in this moment right here, it makes a lot of sense. So it's just timing. It's just timing.
I'm taking things too seriously. I was definitely taking myself too seriously when I was first doing instructor schools, and I would like have a beautiful mind, like this map up, like this is how you do it.
Right.
And then
the over planning, the like, you know, everything down to the breath cues and the transitions.
I was taking it seriously, you know, and what I found is if we are just direct and simple, it lands better. So, so maybe I've learned a thing or two.
I was just telling this story this morning, but I had to learn very quickly that yoga, which you'd think it kind of would just come with the training, but you really got to flow. You got to go with the flow, because when I taught my very first class, I planned this class out just so incredibly deep. I spent hours, and because I was like, this is my first class. And so I don't know even what I was thinking at this point, but for my first ever class, I decided I wanted to do this big ladder sequence that built up to wheel. And so I was like, I wanted this to be so special and amazing. And in my beginner community, I was like, I wanted to, you know, I learned very fast. And then in walks a lady who was in her third trimester. And I was like, we're not doing wheel today. Okay, we're doing something else. So I was like, all right, we're throwing that out the window. I ended up doing something else completely. I was so nervous the whole time because I was like, this is not what I had planned. And then afterwards, I got, you know, such great feedback. I was like, really?
I feel like everyone in the class is a traumatic event. Like I can remember, I remember my aunt came and I was like, oh, is this right? And then also like early on in my yoga teaching career, I remember I taught at like a Equinox gym in New York, and I taught it down on Wall Street, and it was like big, scary bankers, and left, and I was like, I totally forgot one side. I totally forgot to do one side. I'm a kid, you know, but listen, like again, it's when you
forget the lefts and rights, like there's just you gotta think about so much. There's so much that's going through your brain, and especially if you do any kind of like I started doing a certain kind of flow where you're doing, we do one part over and over again, then we do another part over and over again. And then at the end, we kind of have this yoga recital where we're going through all the flows. And I always say it's like, this is like our final yoga dance. And so then we would go through it at the end. And I had somebody afterwards, I was like, how do you remember everything we did the entire class for our final yoga dance? And I was like, you know what? It comes very naturally when you're teaching it, but like then when you have to give yourself a little grace when you forget your lefts and rights. You know, there's a lot going on.
I'll be like, did I do the left or the right? Left. Okay, great. Now, or I'll say to them, do the other side. Like, you know, I'll leave it up to them.
That's my fail safe. I was like, what foot are we on? Just do the other side, whatever foot you're on.
I have a horror story, it was a horror story. I have a horror story as well. I was teaching during COVID, so I was teaching via Zoom. Taught a wonderful class.
Then I have to tell my point of view of this when you're done.
Taught a wonderful class.
I'm excited.
And this is a group of first responders, right, from all over the country. We're doing free classes via Zoom for whoever wanted to join. And I got to them into what Olivia said, neurological reset. It's Shavasana at the end. We don't use Sanskrit and prior protocol just to make it very easy and accessible for first responders to join us. So during neuro reset at the end, I'm in this moment where it's just like a few minutes of like this meditation that they're working on their own. And the Zoom, everybody's out, like everybody's down, right? And the Zoom link shuts off. Like you can't pull them out of it because like you can't get back into the class because like the class just ends via Zoom. Like Zoom just is like meeting over, end.
Their eyes are on the ground. Like we can't be like, guys, like log back in. No.
Right. So it's just like, okay. And so I was waiting for people to be like 3 hours later, like I'm imagining them in their house or in the firehouse or whatever. Like 3 hours later, like, did he forget about us? Like they fell asleep.
Waking up from our impromptu nap.
Right? Yeah, totally. And so like And then Justin was like, well, I hope for the best. They all come out of this on their own at some point.
Like, well, bye, fuck it. We cracked a beer.
Did you ever hear from any of them where they're like, oh yeah, I noticed eventually?
I think a couple of them did say like, oh, that was a really long, or I don't know. My view of this all was that I was being his model student. I was being his whatever demo. And that's how we typically actually do with video stuff, is that the teacher's actually behind the screen talking and you're seeing the student. So he's teaching, and honestly, it was like a really great class. I was like taking the class. I was like in it, and pacing was great. Everything was great. And I'm in neuro reset, and all of a sudden, all I know is that he went from being a great teacher to a shitty teacher, because he was like, all right, just fucking get up, like whatever. And I was like, and then he looked at me and said, the Zoom went off. So I thought, because I thought he was just telling everyone like, fuck it, get up, and I was like, what? But he was just saying to me like, and get up. Like, he was so pissed.
Oh my God. I couldn't even imagine from your point of view. You're like, wow, oh, okay, yeah, sure, okay.
And then I was like, what? So, there are.
He didn't mean it. Oh.
Her stories are hysterical, and I've been teaching for over 20 years, and I still can trip over things. We try to remind our instructors when they're teaching that just teach the essence of what you know. We're not here to put on a show where you have to be, perfect. And
right.
Again, I'm actually really impressed by the fact that after 5 days, we have folks really owning the space as they teach, which I know even after 200 hours, you still feel like you're going to shit your pants when you go teach. So I'm pretty impressed. I want to tell a quick little story about you were talking about your dad. We were like, oh, sorry, he didn't mean to say that. And, just inappropriateness of public safety, and how humor is part of everything. And this actually goes in with adaptability. One thing I wanted to say, what I'm noticing about you, Kat, is that you are very adaptable, and that's one of our core values. So you're going to fit in great. And adaptability is definitely something our instructors need to have, and a sense of humor. So I'm actually teaching for Eric's department. I'm not going to say who these people, I'm not going to say their names, but they were in Baby Cobra, and they were lifting their pelvis. One guy specifically was like lifting his pelvis off the floor, like this. And I was trying to explain to him to get his hip bones, press your hip bones against the floor to, to strengthen your low back and the tops of your feet. And he just was not getting his hips to the floor. And I was like, hips to floor, hip bones, front, not your back, front. And then the guy next to him turns to him and says, we'll call him John. John, it's where your dick is. And then he was like, oh, okay. And like pressed his pelvis. Like, alignment was like perfect. And I was like, well, that did the trick, Oh
my gosh. I was just talking with a teacher, and we're like, and I'm getting to the point where I feel like, with my regulars specifically, I feel like I could be a little more fluid. But when I was first starting to teach, I was like, instructors use all this flowery language, and I love it, and it really like makes me think sometimes, but sometimes I just want to be like, down dog, point your butt to the ceiling, like turn your ass up.
Exactly how we teach. Oh my God, Kat, literally, where we have to, and this is what I mean by taking people out of their bad habits, right? Because when we get yoga instructors, 200-hour plus or whatever at our instructor school, they'll try to come with like this poetry for downward facing dog. And I'm like, what can we say instead? And it's like, point your ass up at the ceiling. And you don't have to make it into
nobody's confusing that. Nobody's putting an elbow up.
And your cops and firefighters are going to love it because they're like, oh yeah, I get that. Like,
yeah, I could totally see that being a way more reciprocated way of, teaching in that realm.
Let me tell you something. I had a yoga teacher who was all, floaty, like flowery. And then I literally saw her give someone the finger on the road, like after class. So
we're spiritual gangsters.
Is like whoever's talking about like your starlit heart, you're being fake. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're
still a human.
Taxes. We all hate it. We all get like don't come at me with your, whatever. Like, let's keep.
Yeah.
So I think that's like the number one thing is we just come at it. This is the reality. The realness is neuroscience. The realness is data. And we come with the Eastern and Western science of yoga. We come with the numbers. We come with the data. And that's what we come with direct, just direct cues, direct coaching. Yeah. And I think that's like, one of the many ways that people can feel like this is actually training and not something that's supposed to, I don't know, ask them to do something that's literally not possible for them on any level.
Yeah. It's very refreshing. Like this is very refreshing because, when I teach, I do fall into those habits of wanting to like create the flowery environment. But I realize like when you kind of break people out of their bubble with like real talk, that is doing a lot more than skirting around the edges and letting them come to their own conclusions all the time. And right. Like, I will definitely have some of those like ooey gooey classes where, I feel like people can really just kind of dissolve into them. But I feel like you have to have a mixture and you have to break that up and still kind of show who you are, because I get that all the time. Like, I think, it goes along with the idea of like, oh, you don't look like you're a yoga instructor. I mean, I feel like I kind of fit the stereotype for a yoga instructor, but I mean, I still go out to the bars. I still drink, I still have fun and do my thing. And so I always got in my head when I would, our town is small. We have like 2 bars here. I'd go out to a bar, and when we first started the studio, I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't have a student see me drinking, like God forbid they think that I'm a human.
Dude, right? I was teaching in New York and many years ago when I was single, and one of my students asked me out on a date, and he asked me if I wanted to go get tea. I was like, no, bitch. I was like, if it was for a martini, then maybe, but like, it was just like a scoop.
Martini, yes.
Fun. Anyway, well, Eric and I bonded because over this, we like the same whiskey. So we were like.
So this is begging the question. This is one of the, like I said, like we said at the beginning, we usually have cocktails as we're drinking. We're drinking coffee for some reason. You said you'd bring a roadie along. So.
I would have.
What's the drink of choice? I mean, Olivia was just going to share that we are whiskey people, so we bonded over that. It was in our wedding vows. So what's the drink of choice?
I am a dirty martini gal. That is my drink of choice. And I also have gotten into the habit, because if you go somewhere and you order martini, they're going to give it to you up and they're going to give it into the stemmed glass. And so sometimes I'll be like a discreet martini drinker, and I'll get in like a bucket glass and everything. But I really do just love the drink. And so I make about home. The blue cheese stuffed olives.
Yes. Oh, I found this pepper martini that a local distillery does. So it's and I put I don't do them dirty, but I do a twist of lemon and then like blue cheese olive. Woo!
Oh, yes, that's my drink.
In person.
Olivia took it so far that like she's even pickled her own like tomatoes and stuff to put in her martini.
Me too. Yes, I'm a pickler.
Martinis to have those little pickled, little tomatoes.
Yes.
I started a garden, able to pick the green tomatoes to pickle them for my martinis. Like,
yes, I'm starting a little herb garden myself. But one of my biggest things was I love pickling. I love pickling everything. It's been a weird phase I'm going through right now. I don't think it's a phase anymore. It might be a problem. But I pickled cauliflower. I pickled avocado. Wouldn't recommend that one. It tasted like garbanzo beans. So if you do, just think of garbanzo beans and it tastes just like it. But yeah, I'm a big pickler.
You start pickling things, and also when you get bangs cut, like I did yesterday, people start asking if you're okay. Like,
listen, I literally asked.
You smell like brine.
Right? So since we're going off the rails for a minute, which is typical for the show, she comes home from getting a haircut yesterday, and she's like, I asked my stylist for bangs, and she didn't cut them in enough. I think I'm going to cut them more in. And I looked at her, I was like, do we need to have a conversation first? Like, are we going through something?
Cutting your hair.
And bangs, nonetheless. Like, because there's that.
Everyone goes through it.
Yeah. I also used my toy poodle, not my toy poodle, my dog, which is a toy poodle's shears to cut my bangs.
whatever you got on hand. You know what? My sister cut her own bangs, and they actually look pretty dang good. And I don't trust myself with scissors that close to my face, but I'll probably get there eventually.
I like to do my own eyebrows too, so you know.
Oh yes,
I like to live on the dangerous side. Okay, to bring it back, I'm curious two things. I want to say that I am so happy when I meet yoga instructors who know that we're all still students and that we never know enough and we always need to learn. And so for you to be like, oh, I want to do this and I need education around it, like I would take your yoga class. You know, I would know I have something to learn from you too. So that's super important. And I love meeting people like that. When you imagine, so, you know, everyone, Kat has not taken our course yet, so we haven't painted the picture of what this could look like or what, you know, our instructors can offer, etc. But from the side you're on now, which is before you jump into the course, what would be your best, like, what are you imagining this could be for you in your town? What would be your ideal scenario as you're a certified licensed YFFR instructor? All right, what would this look like for you?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I have made a big switch in myself and my business this year. I've always kind of been focused around this, but I'm very passionate about my community, and whether that's building my own community that's people from everywhere, or if it's the Dixon community, I just love people. And so my biggest hope for running or, you know, being a trained yoga for first responders instructor would be to be able to provide this to my own community first and foremost. I actually, as soon as I got off the meeting with Jess, I went to our city's State of the City address, which was like this meeting with the mayor and the chief of police were there and everybody was there. And so afterwards, I went and actually like introduced myself to the chief of police. His name's Robert Thompson, and I was like, "Hey, this might be a little premature, but I'm thinking of, you know, doing this course, and I'm wondering, you know, do you guys have anything like yoga related in your department already?" And he's like, "No, but, you know, we'd definitely be willing to look at that. Like, send me over some information." So like I'm already trying to lay the seeds of creating this kind of community, you know, the yoga for first responders community in the Dixon community. But also being able to fill a need wherever that is in my area, whether that's virtual and can be anywhere, or if that's in surrounding cities. So that's what my hope is.
You are doing it. You're way ahead of it, going straight up to the chief and talking to them. That's exactly what I did back in the day, pounding the pavement, and that's amazing. And part of certification is teaching 5 YFFR classes, and you can teach them to anyone. But we recommend going to the department and be like, "Hey, I have to teach these 5 classes for my certification. Would you guys do me a solid and be my students?" Like,
right.
ask,
and then hook them in. Then they realize, wait, this is amazing.
Yeah. Exactly. So you're already ahead of the game.
And so then you said too, in that dream of the ideal world is like actually not even the ideal world. You did this. You said, "Hey, great, I'll send you some more information." So this is where Olivia was saying is like, as an organization, we have, once people become certified, we have all those resources. So there's already basically a kit that we call a buy-in kit that goes through the science about what you're going to teach, why you're going to teach it that way, how we approach it, so that it's incredible, job specific and culturally informed, so that you as an instructor don't have to come up with any of that. You literally go to your resource, your toolkit, as we call it, and you say, "Oh, I want some resources for a police chief," and you download the PDF and send it to him. Like, so it's all.
That's incredible. I was already trying to think about like how I'm gonna create like a little pitch for him. He was a very cool guy, so I think he would have just sat down and chat. But I want to be able to provide
you now. So I mean, so we'll definitely give you whatever you need now. But yeah, as Eric said, the instructor toolkit is filled with marketing stuff, which I'm sure you could tell us where we need to improve on. But curricula, like everything that you need is in there. So all you have to do is come in and float on a cloud and teach. You don't have to worry about all other shit. We've done it for you.
The hardest part is honestly that initial conversation, like, "Hey, I'm providing this service. Is this something that your men and women would be interested in?" And if the answer is like, "Yeah, great, I'll send you more information," then everything's there. So literally it's that question. So what I'm trying to do is say is like, fantastic job on you for already doing that. For other yoga instructors and teachers across the country that are like, "Oh, I don't know if this is for me or not," literally the hardest part of it is that first question.
Yeah.
You know?
I had to learn, I'm a big planner. And so I had to make a shift in myself to become more of like a doer and not just a sayer. Because I would have all these plans and do all these things, kind of like with my first yoga class. I didn't schedule it for so long, and like I didn't, plan it for so long. And then when I finally was like, okay, I'm going to do it, still planned a little bit more. And then I finally just had to pull the trigger and I had to do it. And so that my, shift this year would try to be more involved with my community. That was just kind of like one of the things I'm really trying to connect with everybody, in this town and beyond. So I was excited. I honestly was like, I wanted to introduce myself to him prior, but you guys kind of gave me that avenue to be like, hey, I'm a yoga instructor. Also, I have something that you might like.
Well, that's exactly it. And so for anyone who's listening too, like that's exactly the opener is, I want to go to this training. Here's what it's about. It's, it's data, there's evidence backed, protocol. Like, if I go to this training, would you be interested? I mean, it is a great, I think for someone in command staff, they don't want to think of the idea themselves. They want you to say, here it is,
Give them
and
a
so
turnkey option. Yeah.
Absolutely. To close out, do you have any burning question for Eric or me about anything at all, from cocktails to fire experience for Eric to teaching experience for me, anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want like your guys' stories with that, because this is the first time we're kind of getting to chat. And I know you guys are certified instructors, you're a firefighter. So like, what was your guys' meeting story? And excuse me, I have to plug in my computer. I all of a sudden decided to want to try and die on me, so my background is changing. But I would love your guys' like origination story.
Like how we met as a met.
Maybe met, and then how that translated to YFFR.
Yeah. So
YFFR, I love to say that YFFR predates us. It's all her idea. Like she started this before we met. I'm just going to put that up there because that's an important piece.
I'll take you up to the moment I've met Eric. So I've been a yoga teacher since 2003. So I was about to say 2013 because I felt that was a long time ago. And then I was like, oh no, it's even longer. So 2003, I was a professional dancer in New York, and, I taught yoga on the side, et cetera, et cetera. And in 2013, I was living in Los Angeles. I was teaching yoga at a Beverly Hills studio and was over the fact that branding and marketing and, that the branding of Beverly Hills yoga outweighed the content of the yoga and the class itself. I really wanted to teach yoga, and they were worried about how short my shorts were and the playlist. And I was just sick of it. I was over it, and it grossed me out and I didn't like it. So I was like, okay, this was actually before 2013. First was who needs yoga? And I was still teaching at studios at this time, but who needs yoga desperately, and who really wants the authentic practice of it? And at that point, as it still is now, but the consciousness of veterans and, how much post-traumatic stress they have, suicide rates, that was really getting more known publicly. And so I went to get trained in how to teach yoga to veterans with post-traumatic stress. That's what I was doing at first. It was very strict, trauma sensitive yoga training. I was teaching in the VAs, etc. And then I was actually on the phone with my mom. I was living in Los Angeles. I was working for a yoga magazine, and a fire truck went by. And I said to my mom, like, okay, hold on, there's a fire truck. And she actually said to me, what about first responders? And I fell into the trap that most people fall into, is they don't think about first responders, because you call 911 and they're going to show up no matter what, regardless. So you don't even think about supporting them because you don't think that it's important to invest in them. You just don't think about it. And the thing about veterans is that I was teaching people who were no longer active, or they were coming back from deployment, or they had diagnosed post-traumatic stress, whatever. But it was their active duty was done. and they're on the other side of it, and we're processing the stress and acclimating them back into civilian life. But it hit me like a ton of bricks that a first responder goes into their own war zone every day, not knowing what that will look like. And then they have to go home to a family who needs them as well, and back and forth and back and forth, for a 30-year career. And I was like, holy shit. Okay, well, I need to get trained in how to teach to first responders appropriately. So I Googled yoga for first responders. Nothing came up. So I couldn't ignore it. I was like, well,
Wow.
guess I have to make this happen. So I contacted Los Angeles Fire Department, and it was kismet that I got a hold of the right person, the department psychologist, who knew that, yoga would be great for them, but also knew that alpha males probably wouldn't latch on to it. And I told him my experience teaching veterans and military. And the way I teach is kind of militant anyway, because I was taught in a very traditional way, or trained in a very different traditional way. So when I started teaching at Los Angeles Fire Department twice a week, I realized that how I was approaching veterans was not appropriate for approaching first responders who are still active.
Interesting.
It's two different, there's some overlap, but it needed a different approach.
Probably that hardening that you were talking about, that kind of like lock up after you, isn't something that you would probably replicate for veterans, right?
Well, exactly. And the fact that, they're still active, and also we can't simply regulate. They have to go back into an activation. So they actually need to train their nervous system how to be in activation as well as regulate. So what I did to tailor it was over several years, with ride-alongs, with talking to people. I started to teach in a fire academy and a police academy. So I started teaching for the Los Angeles Police Department as well. I moved to Iowa, started teaching for the departments there, taught in a fire academy, police academy, and they asked if I wanted to join the recruits and go through some classes in the academy to familiarize myself. And so I did, which I can't even imagine doing now. And I learned so much about how the job specific application. One of our instructors, who's a retired Chicago Police Department officer, I was having a talk with him yesterday, and he calls it incidental training, where you don't realize when you're practicing yoga that you're also practicing the mechanical advantage for defensive tactics, So there was so much of that job specific application that I began to layer that into our training. So it wasn't just for regulation anymore. It was also for enhancing performance. And then all this brain science started to back up everything I was discovering hands-on, right? And so I'm going to pass it on to Eric, because this is right where our meeting happened. So I was doing an instructor school at Kansas City Police Department, and there was a captain there from a local fire department who said to me, you should go get your fire instructor 1 training and certificate, because you just need to have like a fire department sponsor you to do it. And you already have curriculum, and it would just give you a lot more, or even more, buy-in if you have, this certification. So I looked up where those certifications, or, where that training was happening locally. I saw that it was happening at West Des Moines Fire Department was hosting it. And so one of the other departments I was teaching for sponsored me to go to this fire instructor 1. So it's a bunch of firefighters and me. And so, and I go through the week-long training, and it's basically teaching you how to be an instructor, So we all had to present something from, how to tie your shoe to whatever, but just practicing presenting. So I presented my yoga stuff, and the guy teaching the class was the training chief for West Des Moines Fire. And he pulled me aside after, and he said, would you consider teaching at this department? So I said yes, and I taught at that department. I taught every shift, every single week. And that was Eric's department, and he was A shift, and he was one of my students. And so, Eric, now you can take it from your point of view as this bitch comes in and starts telling everyone what to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, the long and short of it is that she was the yoga instructor at our fire department, and we have a rule not to date your students in our organization. And if you do date them, you will marry them. Like, that's the only option, because we run a very, very professional organization. We run into issues. Other organizations that have had issues of that not being the case. We'll just leave it at that.
Oh no! Did you ask her out for tea?
No. So I was actually in my transition away from the fire service, but I had worked my entire career very much being around the proactive mental health wellness side of it, and trying to do better through peer support, through being a leader in the organization, things like that. And so when I found out about this organization and that there's science behind a proactive training tool, my mind was kind of blown. And so as I transitioned out of the fire service, our relationship started, and that was the rest is history, actually. So as a firefighter being taught this, I'll be honest, I'd never touched a yoga mat before. That was my very, very first experience of it. It wasn't for me. But to see that there was a way that you could experience the benefits of it that was exactly for us was so profound and powerful. It was amazing. And then now we have traveled the country together for 6 years, teaching about mental health wellness to cops, firefighters, military personnel, and are killing it, quite frankly. Like, we're enjoying it. It's fantastic. And it's honestly divine timing. I mean, it's by divine timing that we ever met exactly when we were supposed to meet, because there's no reason that Olivia and I met, quite frankly. Like, when you go back and when you go back and look at like our life stories and our life journeys, there's literally like no reason that we met,
crazy?
Other than divine timing.
To my point of view for a second, when I started each, and you'll learn this in training, that we always start a series of yoga classes with a training demo, meaning like a lecture style. Like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're not doing. You know, you sit down and talk to them about everything. Otherwise, they're going to have all these misconceptions. So during that first presentation for his shift, I was not feeling well. I had like a cold. I was really just like out of it, and I couldn't get my computer to work. And so I was like, can anyone help me? And they were like, oh, wait till Brenneman shows up. Wait, his truck's not here yet. Wait till they show up. He's the computer guy. So when he gets there, all I know is this man comes up and makes my computer work. And I was like, okay, thank you. And I think we were already dating when I found out that you were the person that did the computer for me. Like, oh my God, that was you. Like, because I was just like so like out of it and like behind on my schedule and stuff. So
what? That's crazy.
It is a little bit crazy because we met long before that the conversation started. But she was like, he's another Joe. And I was like, here we go again, another training thing.
And then,
right.
Well, and then he asked me after class one time, he said, is yoga philosophy similar to Stoic philosophy? And I was like, this is not a question I get from a firefighter normally. So he kind of stuck out in my that way. And, so we stuck out a couple times, but then we ended up having the whiskey conversation after class.
That did it.
Yeah, that did it. So, anyway,
there's a lot of country songs about around that exact same thing. So turns out.
But he got him in training. He became a certified yoga instructor, YFFR instructor. He's an excellent, excellent teacher. Like, honestly, he teaches our training now, and became president of the organization and my baby daddy. So there you
go.
We do have a sweet little girl. That's amazing.
That's an amazing story. I totally believe you on the like divine timing thing. And just like the way paths cross in general, my fiance actually, we thought we were strangers when we met. And the way we met is its whole other story. But we thought we were strangers. And then like when we started getting into a relationship, turned out that our families had known each other. And there was a picture of us on the back of a horse together when we were kids. And we were like, wait, I didn't know you. And they're like, I didn't think
so
I knew
cool.
you.
Well,
right? So it's crazy.
And so when I say like it's crazy, like there's no reason that we should have met. But yet again, like when we started to trace back our history of lives together, we actually figured out that, whether you want to believe it or not, that the universe was trying to actually get us to run into each other multiple times over the course of history.
Yes.
And so we were actually literally in the same room when she was touring for a Broadway show of Producers, and my then college roommate and I went to see the show, and she was on the stage. Like Olivia was on the stage. So we were literally in the same room, like 16 years ago or so.
When I knew that was me performing in that city on that date.
That is incredible.
And then,
like this was a long time ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago almost at this point. And then fast forward, and I was on the fire department by this point, and some buddies and I went out to Las Vegas, and we ended up staying in a hotel that just off the Strip. And Olivia was in a show in Vegas at this time, and she was a cocktail waitress at the casino that we were staying in. So, like, again, we were there for 3 days, and there's high probability that she was one of the cocktail waitresses, like, on her days off from the show, in the same hotel that, like, we were staying in. So, again, like, the universe tried to bump us together. It didn't work.
The heck?
We then had to go through all of that to get us to meet. Literally,
you guys had to meet on a mutual ground. Like, there were so many of these, like, and then it had to have been same thing. I mean, I'll keep it short, but mine is not as crazy as that. That's quite wild. So Cameron's my fiance, and he's originally from Dixon too. In small town, you're gonna bump into each other. That's why it was so crazy that we didn't know each other. We were like, okay, like, you know, you're from here, yeah, I'm from here. So what happened was I moved away for a little bit when I was a kid, and when he was here, and then when I moved back, he actually moved away. And so then there was 1 year where we were actually here at the same time, or there may have been a little bit more than a year, but there was 1 year where we would have been in the same place. We went to the same high school. Like, we literally went to the same high school. And we looked back there. We found a video from like a rally, and I zoomed in. I actually found him, and I was like, you were there when I got my Distinguished Scholar Award. Like, what the heck? And so we had like never crossed paths, like never, you know, met each other. And then it wasn't until after high school, I moved away to Lincoln, which is a little over an hour away, and he had moved to Vacaville, actually. And so we were nowhere near Dixon. But then a Dixon mutual friend was like, you guys should meet each other. And like, do you know Cameron? Do you know Katrina? And we were like, no. And so we met each other. And like, that would have been the time where we start going the opposite way. We moved in opposite directions. We're starting to go, you know, opposite ways in life. And like a mutual friend was like, wait, you know, and then we finally met. Yeah, it's so crazy. We had so many opportunities, but if I had met him any sooner, you know, it wouldn't have been the right time. I had to go through what I needed to go through. He needs to go through what he needs to go through. So when we met, that's when it worked out.
Yeah.
And we say the same thing. Like, there's like, we're strong, independent people now because of the stuff that we had to go through, and that actually makes us a stronger partnership now. And we look back, like, man, if we would have met in 2006 when we were just babies in the world, quite frankly, like, it would not have worked. And that was completely,
it wouldn't have worked. You need to live your own life, learn your own lessons. There was a lot of, you know, hard lessons that each of us had to learn on our own so that we were in the right headspace to come together when we did. Because, you know, there's no doubt in my mind that is my life partner. So, you know, but that would have been a different story if we met, you know, before those hard lessons.
So when are you getting married?
He just proposed in December, so I don't know.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, he caught me by surprise.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And what does he do?
He's a land surveyor, so he's getting into the mortgage industry as well, but he does land surveying right now. I'm trying to pull him more into yoga. Gosh, it would be a dream if he was an instructor. I would have him cover so many classes.
Oh my gosh, that's the next project.
Yep, he's our next project. We have to get him.
I love it. And if he says anything like, oh, I'm not a yoga guy, or I don't blah, 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 or whatever, just be like, dude.
He loves restorative. He loves restorative yoga. He falls for the bolsters.
We have a version of that in YFFR too. It's called Removing the Armor. So
yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So he'll fit right in. Tell him like this is he's our demographic, a dude.
Yep.
Assuming he's
yeah. I'm going to start prepping him, to be on track for getting a part of this program. I've so many times I have to drag him kicking and screaming. So I'm like, it's good for you. And then he comes and he's like, that's amazing. Why don't I do that more? I'm like, can you remember this moment right now, please?
Drag myself kicking and screaming.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I get it. Well, speaking of that and speaking of getting folks to training, I want to mention for anyone's listening a couple of resources that you can use to sort of launch you into training, whether you're in person or digitally online. Also, by the way, I do want to mention, because I went live yesterday on our Instagram, and this was a question that came up. If you are a 200-hour trained instructor, you can still come to the in-person instructor school. It's always going to be the diamond because there's nothing better than just working face-to-face, right? So that is still open for everyone. It's only the bridge course, which is required to have at least a 200-hour trained certificate. So I wanted to make that clear. Okay, so we're going to put this in the show notes. We're also going to put, is there a link to get your book, by the way, Katrina?
I found
it's on Amazon. I can send you the link.
I got it. The link
to Dixon, and he got the link to your. It's all manipulation of Dixon.
Yeah, I know you're doing some work back there.
Yeah, it's going to be in the show note. It'll be in the show notes, so people can go to the show notes to get Kat's book. Do you want us to link to Busy Bee or your other marketing company as well? We'd be happy to put those in the show notes as well, but it's up to you.
Yeah. I created kind of like a catch-all link because I realized I'm kind of everywhere. So it's a little hard to be like, here's this and this and this. But HelloThereKatrina.com has links to Busy Bee. It has links to Maganda. It has, which is the media company. And it kind of has all the announcements. It has my book on there.
Yes, too. We need to have a catch-all because Eric and I, on a personal side, we make candles, by the way. we have a company, and so we have to do our own.
I love that.
Website.
Yeah, you need to get like at least a link tree. I stayed away from link tree just because I was like, I feel like I'm gonna change all this all the time. So
yeah. So folks, if you do want some more information or more on the approach for teaching yoga to first responders, we will also link in the show notes a link to our guide. I wrote a little PDF ebook that has the principles of empowering first responders through yoga. So click that link and you can get the guide emailed to you. And is it next week or the week after? So not this, what day is it today? Friday. So it's not Friday. Next, but the week after, I'm going to be doing a free webinar masterclass.
Do you have the date for the webinar? Just because this will air on Thursday, February 5th.
So it will be next week. I'm going to tell you when these dates are right now. It is going to be February 20th, February 22nd, and February 28th. And I'd be guessing if I gave you the times now. We have the times, but I'm not looking at them right now. But I know it's February 20th, 22nd, and 28th. Times are going to be around like 10 a.m., 12 p.m., different times on those dates so that everyone has an opportunity to join. And that's kind of going to go deeper into what the PDF guide goes into. So that should give everyone a nice little launching pad to runway to jump into instructor school. So maybe we can get your fiance to join us on those webinars.
Yes. I love these master plans.
Kat, thank you for spending so much time with us. And we really look forward to having you on the team. And I hope that anyone who's listening and can relate to, where you are currently, wanting to kind of move into first responders and want to make sure you're well equipped to do so, feel confident after hearing you and where you're coming from.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. This was amazing. And next time, cocktails. We're doing it.
To have part 2 with cocktails, and we should never not tell our guests.
You gotta put that in like the mandatory requirements. You gotta.
The guest, I was like, "What? I could have had a cocktail."
I love it.
Whole time? Are you kidding me?
No, amazing. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you again for spending so much time with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, before we go, I want to remind you that training your mental and physical health is incredibly important, especially for those working in high-stress jobs like first responders.
And if you're interested in learning more about yoga for first responders, visit yogaforfirstresponders.org for our on-demand training app, online course platform, in-person training, and more.
Like this podcast, subscribe, and give us a great review. We are so happy to have you part of the YFFR mission.